Wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to dial in today and join us as we have this important and timely discussion on reimagining human resources. We hope that you will gain some key takeaways by the end of this webinar, and regardless of what your job title is, so whether you are a student or a recent graduate, a mid-level professional, a job seeker, an HR business partner, a recruiting specialist on the C-suite level, or someone that's thinking about exiting this industry, there is valuable information in this discussion that will apply to you. Next slide, please. So my name is Tandeka Nombete, and I will be moderating the discussion this afternoon. I lead the QGrads division of Crestpro, which is the premier staffing and recruiting firm within this industry. So that's risk management, insurance, and actuarial science. The QGrads division of Crestpro focuses on current college students as well as recent graduates, and we help them find internships and job opportunities within this industry. So I studied risk management, insurance, and actuarial science at Georgia State University. And then I worked for Marsh for 5 years and then got the chance to work for a national professional association. So I gained some experience in working for a nonprofit, and now I'm on the staffing and recruiting side of the industry. With us here today, we have Noelle. Give us a wave, Ms. Noelle. Noelle is the co-founder and chief transformation officer of Verto. Noelle is a results-driven executive with a recognized passion for bolstering the reputation of the insurance industry and a proven track record in the arenas of risk and insurance, nonprofit management, education, and recruiting, consistently driving organizational and financial growth. She is a frequently sought speaker, offering insights on the future of talent, sustainable recruiting strategies, and diverse and inclusive pipelines and workplaces. So thank you for being here with us today, Noelle. We also have Taylor Jones with us today. Say hi, Taylor. Taylor serves as Vice President of Business Development for QuestPro, an insurance-specific staffing firm with a national presence. In this role, Taylor oversees new business sales across all service lines and manages relationships with existing accounts. A member of the UT Dallas RMI Advisory Council, Taylor also serves as an associate member of IICF Southeast Division Board, as well as a director with the Dallas chapter of Young Risk Professionals. In 2020, Taylor was elected as an emerging leader in insurance by the American Property and Casualty Insurance Association and the Insurance Careers Movement. Taylor has been featured in Insurance Journal and as a guest on the industry-leading podcast, Spot on Insurance. By the way, Taylor also recently won a RISE Award, which is a national award that recognizes top talent within the industry. So congratulations, Taylor.
Thanks for the shout out.
And we are so lucky to have Niara Perry with us here today. Hi, Niara. Niara is the head of D&I at Founder Shield, a leading company within the insurtech space, where she aims to make a career in insurance accessible and visible to those who have traditionally been excluded from this industry. Her passion for the role stems from her dedication to fostering safe spaces and her strong belief in the power of human connection. In addition to spurring her career in D&I, this belief has inspired her many projects outside her 9-to-5. You can find more on Niara's work on podcasting platforms, where she co-hosts Persisting in Color, a podcast about navigating the workplace with minority identities, and in her new collection of poetry, Mourning a Stranger. Thank you for being here today, Niara. And last but not least, we have Survey Spruill here with us today. Hi, Survey. Survey works as a director of talent outreach for Chubb Insurance, one of the world's largest insurance companies. His team is primarily responsible for developing and implementing sourcing strategies for the underwriting and claims divisions across North America. By leveraging cultivated pipelines and networks to provide candidate coverage, he has a deep focus on Chubb's diversity and inclusive initiatives. Next slide, please. So this is the 10th webinar in the Transitions webinar series. So Hopefully you all have watched the other 9 leading up to this one, but if you're not familiar with what the transitions is, it's a movement to help the workers' compensation industry collectively and individually think strategically about how to handle the influx and outflux of talent over the coming decades. The goal of this organization is to encourage the creation of a transition plan for every stakeholder in our industry. Next slide, please. So with that, Taylor, let's start with you. Yeah, so tell us, what does the current job market look like right now? The job market, the talent market within risk management, insurance, and actuarial science.
Sure, yeah. So I'll kick us off, and gosh, I'm in such great company and I'm excited to be here because I think I'm going to end up learning a lot from my fellow panelists. As Tandeka mentioned, I don't focus much on direct facing with candidates anymore. I have in the past. So I think what I hope I can provide is some insight on current market conditions from a client perspective, things that I'm hearing on a day-to-day basis. That's my job. That's what I do every day is I talk to our clients. As Tandeka mentioned, we at QuestPro do recruit for insurers. We focus on the claims side. We'll help large brokers and small mom and pop agencies and really everything in between. And so I think I have a good kind of broad range of what I'm hearing day to day, and I'm curious to know if some of our attendees are kind of in the same boat. But what I'm hearing overall is, there's just not enough candidates out there. So everyone is kind of facing these really large amounts of open requisitions and not enough people to fill those job opportunities. We've seen, gosh, I think 20,000 new jobs have been added to our industry since March of 2020. So really since this pandemic began. And according to Insurance Journal, 50% or a little bit over 50% of insurers are saying that there are more jobs on the way. So it's not just that we've added 20,000 and that's it, and we're looking to fill that. I think we're struggling because we're having to anticipate having even more growth here over the coming months and throughout the rest of this year. So we're seeing it across the board, like I said, from those mom and pop smaller agencies to the larger, property and casualty insurers on both P&C and life and health. So we recruit on both sides, and we're seeing it throughout the industry. So, there's 6.3% unemployment across the country. That's within our entire economy. The insurance industry in particular is 2.2%. I think it's anything that's under 4% is considered fully employed, full employment. So there's not a lot of people out there in our industry that are unemployed, which means they're working down the street for your competitor. So we're having to get creative about our own strategies within a recruiting firm, right? This is like what we're paid to do. This is our bread and butter. This is our job day in and day out, is trying to provide time back in your day and taking that recruiting piece off of your plates so that you can focus on some of those new initiatives that I know our other panelists are going to share more about. But I think we're having to pivot and get creative ourselves about creating new pipelines, finding new candidates, finding ways to attract talent that might be on the peripherals of our industry, but don't know enough about it to really dive in. So we've had to get creative about utilizing our database and our team of researchers and how we can position ourselves to remain competitive. And so just know that it's not just you, it's us too, as a recruiting firm, that we focus on this. We're struggling with it, to be honest. And I think that's been a unique position to be in, especially when I'm speaking with clients every day. Tandeka and I, since we do work together, we have to have these conversations often of, is this something that we can provide the highest level of service for, or is this something we can maybe provide some guidance on about what we're seeing and how we can, add value in a way of sharing things like this, things that we're going to learn today on this webinar. So that's really what we're seeing kind of across the job market. Is it's just it's really tight right now. So
Right,
I know
right. And I like seeing those statistics, like it's staggering really seeing, the unemployment rate nationwide versus insurance industry. So for anyone that may be joining this webinar today that is thinking about entering this industry, this is just another fantastic reason to, think about that, to consider it, that we have stability in general across the board. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think a lot of our clients do struggle. Like they sometimes feel like they're the only ones, of I see so and so down the
right,
street has added 5 new people this quarter, and why can't we find anyone? And it's a conversation that our recruiters are having every day. They're the ones that you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right person, and right now we don't even have them to find. I mean, they're not out there.
we can't
But
find the frogs.
yeah, they are. They're just either working for somebody else or they're working in another industry. And so I know the 3 panelists that we have here, in addition to myself, can provide some good insights too on kind of how to make it more attractive and kind of sing the praises of the industry. I think we all hold that responsibility. I
Yep.
think we as an industry and as professionals here need to do the best we can. It's, I have prior to my experience with QuestPro, I was a recruiting specialist with an internal HR team at a large brokerage. And, I think it's not just up to us recruiters to spread this message, it's on the hiring managers. It's on everybody within our organization. So we're able to provide that feedback at least here, and hopefully everybody can kind of see by the numbers that it's not just you, and we're all going through the trenches together. Yeah, and then
Right.
I've got a couple
We're
of
all
other
in
like
this together.
tactics for priorities and what to prioritize going forward, and what job seekers and employers are looking for too. So I can kind of share some
Right.
of that too.
So why do you think that the job market is so tight right now? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this was another point that I read about in the Insurance Journal, and I know that that's linked here. So if y'all ever want to, take a look at some of these resources that we're sharing, there are 2021 is set to have the largest influx of people returning to the workforce than any year on record. So there's been, with the growth of our industry, really people retiring. We were already under a time crunch, and then the pandemic made it even more so. So with people experiencing unemployment last year, and then all these jobs being added here due to the age gap in our industry and the pandemic, I think that's why we're experiencing the current conditions where we are.
Right. Absolutely. And what is, for those that, may not be privy or, don't know the HR and recruiting side of the industry, what does that life cycle look like? Like what is a typical HR recruiting life cycle, and how is it different now?
Sure. So that's kind of the perfect segue, Tandeka, into what we're seeing from the job seeker perspective. But typical life cycle is, you get your requisition approved, you'll post it, you'll wait for applicants to apply either organically, or you'll start to make those phone calls and reach out, messaging, looking into your networks, offering some referral bonuses. Sometimes that can certainly help. We've seen some good success with that. And then typically HR or the recruiter will have that pre-screen. They'll kind of go through, do you have any non-competes? Are there going to be any snags in this process? Is there anything we need to be aware of right now? And kind of check those boxes before sending them on to the hiring manager. From there, the hiring managers will coordinate an interview, usually 1 to 2, depending on if they need to meet with leadership. And then they'll circle back around with HR and say, okay, we want to offer this. Here's next steps to get them onboarded, and then HR will then coordinate with the teams involved in IT and getting everybody onboarded and set to be up and running. And what we're seeing now, especially from QuestPro's standpoint, is we're having to make a lot more calls for a lot less interviews. So we are not seeing success with people dragging out this 3-interview, 4-interview, taking several months. We need people to kind of bite the bullet if you like who you're talking to. And sometimes that can be great, because you're going to find the top talent and they're going to say, yep, this was done. It was quick. I liked the process, respected that y'all had respect for my time, and vice versa. But we monitor all of these statistics. As a recruiting firm, we are very data driven, and we check our metrics daily. And every quarter we have a review on those so that we kind of know where our time is being spent. We had in the second quarter of this year the highest number of phone calls with the lowest amount of interviews. So I think there's a direct correlation there with, we're calling on so many more candidates than ever before to try to find the right people to present these opportunities to. And instead of usually average I think it's 3.5 is usually what our data says, interviews until offer stage. Right now we're a little bit less than 2. So there are people that are interviewing one time and saying, we see where you're coming from. We've checked your accolades. We're all in the same networks, and I liked you, and let's sign on the dotted line if you feel like this is a good move for you at this time. So that's the new life cycle I think that we're seeing with recruiting, and that kind of lines up with a lot of these job seeker priorities that I've outlined here. People are looking for that efficient interview process. And that's taking some time for recruiters to get used to, and for hiring managers to really wrap their minds around. Candidates want flexibility. They want remote opportunity, at least. They want some hybrid offerings. People are being paid now than they ever have been. I mean, people are frankly overpaid sometimes, and that's what you have to do when these conditions are like this, when there's not, there's not a lot of supply, but very high demand. And so you're going to have to incorporate some new recruiting strategies, and that involves having a more efficient process from beginning to closing them and bringing them on board with your organization.
Yeah, I hear you. And those are some really, really great insights, So I hear you loud and clear. For any hiring managers that might be listening in, propose now. If you have a candidate and you like them, just propose. Don't make them sit through 5 cycles of interviews, because it's a tight market right now.
Especially, and and if we consider, like, not only just is it tight right now, but over half of these insurers are looking to add more jobs. So it's only, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. So just take this into consideration while you still have some time to plan around this and figure out how you want to best go around these strategies.
Yep, I love that. That's fantastic advice. And so what are some employer priorities? I know we talked a little bit about job seeker priorities. So in the spirit of giving advice to employers, what should their priorities be at this time?
Sure. The virtual interviewing, I think, is here to stay. So we need to figure out how to incorporate this into your recruiting strategy day to day, making sure that your recruiters feel like they can take the initiative to share more about the technology that you're offering, share more about what to expect in that process. I think what our organizations and what our leadership can do to better prepare our recruiting staff is make sure that they feel empowered to make those decisions and share early on what the expectations are with the entire life cycle. So, they should be able to share with the candidate up front, this is how the process is going to be. I'm going to talk to you today, and then I'd like to introduce you to your supervisor. Another thing is incorporating more diverse interview panels. What we've seen a lot is they have to meet with your boss and your boss's boss, and then that's who checks you off the list. And we have to empower our recruiters to make these panels happen. Have somebody interview with a different team, somebody that's on that same level that they're interviewing with, maybe that they would be collaborating with on certain projects but don't report to necessarily. It's a really big one, and just finding ways to make the process faster and more efficient so that you're not losing out to your competition.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. And Niara, I'm curious on your thoughts as well. I know we're going to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in a little bit, but do you agree with Taylor's point on having a diverse panel? Like what a difference that might make for a candidate to be interviewed by a diverse panel? and how does that feed into company culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that having a diverse panel in terms of demographics as well as like team that you're interviewing with is huge, especially now. People want to understand what culture they're entering into and they want to understand what dynamic they're going to be entering into. And it's kind of hard to get that when you're just interviewing with the people you'll be directly or indirectly reporting to. So giving them a chance to, I don't know if they're on the operations team and they'll work closely with the tech team, giving them an opportunity to interview with someone on the tech team really lets them know what their day-to-day vibe is going to be, more so than just their like weekly check-ins or fortnightly check-ins, whatever it may be. So I would,
Awesome.
that's important. And then in terms of like efficiency, the fun part, the good part is that making your recruiting process and your hiring process more efficient can also help make it more inclusive. So if you can make it as efficient, standardized, objective as possible, what you're doing is you're extracting out like what is actually needed for this position, what is actually needed for this day to day versus what do I think I want to see in this candidate. And so you kind of, in making it objective and having rubrics and clear indications of what's a successful assessment, what's a successful candidate, you kind of get out of your own way with your assumptions and allow the candidate to naturally shine. And so that's going to really broaden your pool.
Yep, I agree 100. Thank you for that. And I hear you, you're saying remove all the fluff, right? Like, let's make this process more streamlined. Let's make it more efficient.
I was exactly what Niara just mentioned with having, it's not just your weekly check-ins. There are other people in that organization. And there was a LinkedIn study that came out recently that mentioned, they talked to job seekers, and I think they've gathered some aggregate data from their 750 million people that are on LinkedIn. But so who knows, this is not industry specific, so I will preface it with that. But they said 70% of job seekers want to see your DE&I efforts. They want to see your culture in the interview process. So having them cross over with different teams, that's what you're going to have to implement in order to find the best talent for your organization.
I agree. Thank you so much. So hopefully this was insightful to some hiring managers that are out there, recruiters that are out there, and job seekers as well. As we've listed some tips and tricks for you, some priorities in this current job market. So with that, let us transition. Next slide, please. We are going to pivot over to Noelle, and we're going to talk a little bit about the imminent talent gap. We hear so much about this imminent talent gap within our industry. So let us know your thoughts on that, and why is it becoming increasingly difficult to find young talent?
Yeah, thank you, Tandeka. And it's interesting listening to Taylor and Niara and you all to have this first discussion, and then hear you say the words imminent talent gap, because had so many of us or organizations kind of employed the strategies that Taylor is talking about, or really grasped that concept, the talent gap may not be imminent. And imminent is also a funny word because we've been hearing about the talent gap for 11 years. So in the grand scheme of insurance, sure, 11 years is probably imminent, right? We go to snail's pace a lot of times. So 11 years is like a week, I guess, in insurance. But, I'll just hit on it, briefly before going further. But, did in 2010, McKinsey came out with a report about the number of folks that would be retiring from our industry and the number of open positions that it would cause. There was some, I think, changes in the numbers because of some of the lagging impact of the 2008 financial crisis, et cetera, right? And McKinsey laid out all these different things that we should do as an industry, engaging with talent early on, and how we should collaborate and work together. And there have been some really great groups that have tried to tackle those problems, like Insurance Careers Movement, and all the organizations that are involved there. But as an industry, we spend so much time talking about it rather than employing actual strategies to increase exposure to, you know, young people coming out of college or career changers, folks in other industries with relevant skills to our industry. And so basically what the study said is that by 2018, a quarter of the insurance industry was going to retire, right? And so this would essentially have, you know, something like 200 to 400,000 available jobs over slightly after that time frame. I know we missed much of 2020. You know, there's those memes on Instagram right now where like 2020 is like, you're still trying to get over it and 2022 is right behind you. I mean, we're there, right? And we're still talking about this imminent talent gap and what did we do to address it? And then, you know, I think about the talent gap. It's not just the number of people, like getting young people involved, which is what McKinsey talked about. You know, and others, McKinsey and PwC and Deloitte have since addressed these issues too, but, you know, there's a new talent gap. And, or at least, you know, new school talent gap that I think of it as, that really are the result of all the same philosophies and lack of action that we took or didn't take to address younger people coming into the industry. So we have, you know, the COVID talent gap, right, where, you know, we're going to see a change in the work environment, and the insurance industry taking this kind of lackluster approach in many cases as to changing how we're coming back to work. So we're also going to lose career changers in some cases, or cause a greater talent gap with students coming out of school who now have actually gone to college virtually and in a hybrid sense all of last year. And then, you know, the calls for social justice as a result of George Floyd's murder last year, right? That was not a talent gap that we talked about as often as we needed, right? But the insurance industry, a lot of companies now made these bold statements of what actions they would take in order to, you know, rectify the underrepresentation in our industry. And we just see these talent gaps as ways to continue to talk rather than to take action, right? And
yeah,
Taylor mentioned it, right? We all hold a responsibility to engaging talent. And it's about all the actions that we're taking as an organization, right? We call it, you know, Verito, we call it an enterprise-wide approach. Size doesn't matter. And by that, I mean, like, you could be an organization of 10 people, or you could be an organization of 50,000 people, but everybody has some kind of, you know, accountability in getting people interested in insurance, and particularly with students in, you know, secondary and post-secondary education. It's about talking about your job in a way that is relevant and exciting. I think I also worked in the insurance industry as an underwriter, and I also went to school for risk management and actuarial science. And I think one of the greatest parts of that experience was hearing so many people talk about their jobs, right?
Right.
You know, McKinsey also noted that only 5% of college students are actually interested in insurance. And yes, that was back in 2010. I would imagine if you survey college students now, it's still, you know, kind of the same, but we tend to, as an industry, use that as an excuse, like, well, only 5% are interested. Well, how many know that you can be an entertainment underwriter, or focus in construction or art history, or that you could actually be an accountant in the insurance industry, or an investment manager, or, you know, anything that you're interested in, the industry holds, and we don't talk enough about it. My professor says we don't professionalize our profession enough, right? We talk about it as if anybody can do it. You know, I can get anybody, and as Taylor says, you know, there isn't just anybody out there willing to come over right now. We have to go out and do something about it. I often make the comparison too with how we cultivate relationships in the industry for clients. And we spend so much time talking about the client that we didn't get and how we're going to get them next year, or working with a broker. And, you know, it's not a relationship that you just try to cultivate annually. It's something that you do all of the time. And cultivating relationships with institutions or organizations that can bring young talent in is important as well. And so we challenge recruiters to think, you know, how often are you thinking about your early talent engagement? Is it annually? Is it semi-annually? Is it fortnightly, right? It's got to be something that can happen regularly because there's always opportunity. Does the school down the street know your company's name or what you do? Have you participated in an event? Are you helping with professional soft skill building at that university, college campus, community college, whoever it is, right? Customized solutions can be built around geographic location, size of company, what you do. So that's really important.
Yeah.
The other thing, and building on what Taylor and Niara said as well, is that these students are looking for organizations to represent who they are, right? And we know as an industry, we don't represent well. If you're just going to put a bunch of us up on a board of trustees or company board website, but advocating or at least describing what action steps are being taken as a company and what's important is really going to resonate with young talent. You also see organizations like the National Alliance for Insurance Education and Research who have built a high school certification program and are rolling that out nationwide, right? It's a very cost-effective way to work with CTE programs in various high schools. I think now it's in 3 or 4 states. They're looking at 31 campuses or school districts this year and building, even more. But you're having high school students getting certified as a customer service rep, coming, and then looking to go into these other risk management schools, which I think has been, which will continue.
Fantastic.
Really great opportunity for our industry as a whole.
Yep, absolutely. And I hear that more companies need to do that, right? So regardless of the size of the company, whether there's 10 people, 10,000 people, there is a part that we can all play in attracting the next generation of talent. What are some other ways that companies can start to attract that next generation of talent into their organization?
Well, I think it's a recognition that early talent is as important as experienced talent as well, because it's a cultivation, and that it's like I think all of the panelists will talk about. It is everybody's responsibility. It has to be coordinated across the organization. And despite the fact that an organization might not have a need for early talent, they will have a need for experienced talent. And so at a previous place that I worked, we used to say, the organizations would come and say, well, we don't need entry talent. We just need those experienced folks, connect us to your alumni. Be like, well, if you had come in here 7 years ago when we first started having this conversation, you would have relationships with talent that has 7 years of experience. And so whether it's in a school of risk management, like the ones you and I went to, Georgia State and Temple, or if it's at a school that has econ majors or accounting majors or English majors, cultivating that relationship now will pay dividends with your company brand, 3, 5, 7 years down the road. We also tell companies at Verto that you just have to throw out your past assumptions, right? Like, stop saying people aren't interested. Stop saying people are going to get money other places. Stop saying other industries are more competitive. Or that people are just going to come and go. Oh my God, that's the one that makes me cringe the most, right? Like my little gargoyle face when I hear that, right?
People are going to come and go, so why train them, right? Why train them?
So millennials, they're just go somewhere else, or millennials just want open office concept spaces. Ain't that backfiring now to everybody that wants to go back to work? Like open concept office spaces, not good in a pandemic. But at Verto, we survey a lot of individuals, folks coming out of school, folks that have changed jobs, and we really want to get to that authentic experience. It's like, okay, great, I got my job on a job board or through a recruiter, the how and where, that's fine, but how did you feel about it? And what would make you go somewhere else? And so these are the statistics at the bottom of the screen, right? It's like usually people say, well, those young people will come and go. They're just going to leave in a couple of years. And the fact is, of our survey respondents, only 6% said that they would stay at a company only for a few years. Like that was their intent. They're going to leave anyway in a couple of years. So
And that's the misconception, right? That goes
It's a
against
huge
what most
misconception.
people are thinking, right?
I've worked in the industry for 20 years. I've had 3 jobs. So it's, the 17% not being promoted quickly enough, you always hear people say, oh, those millennials or those young people, they just want more money quicker, right? And I said this last week to a group. I say, if we're in person, I say, raise your hand if you don't think you deserve a promotion or a raise, right? And young people aren't at conferences, right? So it's a group of more experienced professionals, as I call them. Everybody wants a promotion or a raise. Millennials, younger people, maybe they say it differently or it comes across differently, but they are eager just like every other employee at a company. But what really resonated in our survey, and this is something we do on a rolling basis, it's not just one and done, we analyze the results, kind of as they come in. But what they would leave for is that, there weren't adequate growth opportunities. And sometimes what we see is that there are adequate growth opportunities. They're not being communicated and they're not being transparent with them to employees as a whole. That their values don't align. Is a company supporting something that, or not supporting something that, these job seekers or young people are, see value in. And then this is my favorite, right? Because I think employee voice is is just the most amazing thing that you can have in a company. And I know Safay is going to talk about it more, but my voice is not valued, right? And so young people too want to know that they're entering an organization where they're not just a number, where they're not just somebody that is looked at to give all the files to and, go off and do work. They want to know that they're going to be heard. And how about it? I mean, young people, they will eventually be the clients too. They're not just some person to kick to the side or, they're the next generation of clients as much as they are our next generation of workers.
Yep. Yeah, I feel that one. My goodness. Yeah. So Safay, I know we're gonna talk a little bit.
Before we shift on, I do actually
please do.
Inspired me per usual. Just looking at that stat around the 17% saying that they're not being promoted quickly enough, and then the 47% saying my voice is not being valued. I think that a lot of, and you touched on this idea that it's like, oh, millennials just want more money. They just always want more money. I think that what gets lost in translation a lot, and I'll admit this is more anecdotal than like data backed, but I think that what's getting lost a lot and what I'm hearing from the people in my circles is that it's not necessarily about the money just on its own. It's that millennials are looking around and saying like, I don't know how I'm gonna take care of myself in a few years. Like money, security, and also recognizing that money is the standard that we're using to show respect. We're saying, I respect what you're doing and I recognize what you're doing enough to pay you what that's worth in this market. Is this market like really inflated and things like that? Yes, but if this is where you're working, people want to be paid the amount that they feel is respectful to their time and their effort. And also they like, for the most part, I think that within the insurance industry, a lot of times what I'm hearing about is, you want ambitious ambitious talent. You want someone to grow into the space. Well, then if you get an ambitious and intelligent talent, then they're going to get bored with that entry level, or they're going to learn what they're doing and they're going to want a chance to grow more, thus adequate growth and training opportunities being important. So I think that piece of it often gets lost in translation because we just talk about it at this surface level of like, it's only about money.
Well, and then when you leave a company, how often you can be like, listen, I just hate the environment here. You're like, nah, they're offering me more money. And, it's an easy exit interview checkbox, right?
Yeah,
and you wouldn't want to go seeking the extra money if the environment you were in was inclusive and belonging and you felt like your voice was being heard.
Exactly. And so do you see similar things? I know we were talking about young talent, entry-level talent, but from that like mid-level experience level, are you seeing similar things on that front as well, that people are looking to be respected, that employees are looking to be seen and heard?
Yeah, I think there's a shift. I think there's a shift in the way people feel about their jobs in total. There's a way that people feel about, like you said, does my company represent me, right? Like, do their values, if they put out a statement, do I agree with it, right? And I don't think that generations before cared at all. They were there to do a job, and then they got paid to do their job, and that was it, right? But all of those things that Noel talked about, and even the era, like, if you boil recruiting down to a really simple thing, recruiters sell one of two things. We either sell why our company is the best company in the world to work for, or why our company is better than your company to work for, right? If you believe one of those two things, and the reason why you believe that is because you believe that at this new company your voice is going to be heard, right? At this new company,
right.
you know, gonna have adequate growth, right? You, no matter what it is, but boil down either where the company that I'm representing is the best company in the world to work for, or why my company is better than the company you're currently working for. That's it. That's what recruiters do. And so you have to talk about these things nowadays. It's not just going to be about the money. And I'll also say this. For the most part, a lot of my managers won't talk to someone just because it's the money, right? Because then they'll think that they'll leave here in 2 years because of the money. If I speak to you about why you're looking to leave, then there's got to be more than just the money. It's got to be growth. It's got to be, my manager's a jerk. It got to be a bunch of different things, but it really can't just be about the money. And so that's how you attract these professionals. You bring in the most that you possibly can. And, everyone has something different. That's why I believe, I probably think too highly of talent acquisition and recruiting, but I believe it's an art, right? I really do. And I think that it's because every single person has different motivations for wanting to leave an organization. And so all of the conversations that we had, you talked to Taylor a little bit earlier about the kissing frogs and like it being a tight market, right? Like the funnel process is what recruiters always look at, right? In 2019, my company had about 250 early career jobs, right? We received 20,000 resumes.
Wow.
For just those jobs. So what the recruiter mindset funnel is, you'll get 40, 50 people in a rec that apply, because the apply button is the easiest button on the internet to press. 30 of them have no earthly business applying for that job. So you kick them out, you got 20 left. You call 10 of them, 5 of them are okay, 5 of them probably don't even live in the same state. And then you get those other 10. Then you bring them down, and then they work towards making it the right fit, right? All right, how much money do you need? Is this going to be a right fit for you, for your family? All of that stuff. Then 5 people interview, 3 people go to the final interview, and then 1 person gets the job. That's the recruiting funnel. That's what's in my mind the entire time I work on a rec. And so all of those people that I have to talk to, it's a different reason. It's a different way of having a conversation with them. It takes like 7.6 seconds before they understand that they're going to hang up the phone on you or not. Right? And recruiters
doesn't take long.
Recruiters talk to people. It's so weird. Recruiters talk to people about really personal things in a really short amount of time. And so you're talking about why you're looking to leave, what your career aspirations are, how much money you make, how much you don't like your job, how much you don't like your manager, right? You don't even really talk to your friends about
it's like a therapy session.
Yes. Family needs, right?
Really,
they
mini
bring
therapy.
up things about their children and schools and priorities for them that are often deeply personal.
Right.
Yeah. So like you have to understand what they're looking for, and then if you have that to offer, that's how you get people to come into your company, right? You have to figure all of these little things out, and then there have been some times where I said that's not us, right? Like you
not a good fit.
You want to you want a dog park. I'm sorry, my New York came out. You want a dog park in the middle of our building? Not gonna happen, right? We don't have swinging chairs from the ceiling. Like, that's just not what this insurance company is about. So this might not be for you, right? But that's what you have to do. You have to tailor everything to the person, and you have to be honest with them. That's how you bring more seasoned people in.
Yep, I love that. So just to swing it back to Noelle, any final thoughts while we're on this slide before we move to the next slide? Anything else you'd like to cover or touch on?
Well, no, but building off of what Savay just said, I'll highlight the authentic external appearance, right? Like you need to be upfront like that. And not only is that engagement, and our survey goes into all of those pieces too, but that engagement piece where he's not just sugarcoating like, oh yeah, maybe we'll get swings next year. That I heard somebody talk about that. No, he's being upfront, and things like social media and a website and just all of those items matter, right? So it has to be authentic. It's not sugarcoating. It's not what you think a candidate wants to see. It has to be what lines up with what they're going to experience.
I love that. Agreed. 100%. So let's move to the next slide. And Savay, so while we're on the topic of that mid-level, experienced talent, let's talk a little bit about the importance of employee resource groups. Do you think that's important?
Definitely. And, I work specifically with all of our employee resource groups. We call them business roundtables, because I think employee resource groups are great, especially when they're just starting out, because there is a level of support, there's a level of comfort, there's a level of trying to make yourself ingrained within the company that I think employee resource groups bring to the table. What I think happens next, and what we've done with calling them business roundtables, is to get their voices to be heard within the business, right? We all know we work for these large companies sometimes, and at the end of the day, we're there to make money. Understanding that our organization should reflect the clients that we're trying to work with, the outside world, like that's breakthrough, right? Like that's the breakthrough. That's where you're saying, all right, you have market intelligence by just being you, right? How can we possibly use that as a way to make the business better, right? We all know the statistics that, teams that are more diverse are more productive, right? Those are easy ways to sell why you need diversity. But when you talk about like going to different organizations or going to different client groups and understanding what matters to them is important. It's important to us. Every employee resource group has put together a little white page that says, in our demographic, right, whether it's mosaic and ethnic diversity, whether it's our pride with LGBTQ+, whether it's impact for women, or whether if it's even salute for our veterans, right? Everything that's important to those groups, I need to understand that. So when I do go speak to those groups, I can bring those things up. Again, why our company is the best company in the world to work for, or our company is better than your company. And why do you think that? Because we understand what you need, what you want, right? And I will never speak to our impact group or our women's group and say, well, here's what I think you as a woman or outside women should really appreciate about our work from home policy or our, like, who am I, right? Like, there's no reason I should be in that understanding or debate on, like, what's important to you. Let me ask you what's important. And that's what we do with all of our employee resource roundtables.
Yeah, I love that. And one quick question for you. So talking about, the importance of diversity and having a diverse team, and, we need to reflect our society, right? We need to reflect our clients, the country in general and those statistics. What do you say to recruiters that claim that they can't find any diverse talent? What would you say to someone who said that? I just can't find the diverse talent.
Right. Like all my panelists, there are links to kind of all of the things that we're talking about, and there is I think there's a general understanding that there are not as many diverse professionals in the insurance industry as non-diverse professionals. That's right. A given. We'll give you that. So is it harder? Yes. Is it difficult? No. And here's the reason why. Just like work harder. Like if it's important to you, work harder. The same thing that you would tell me if I need an inland marine underwriter in New York, right? Here's the funnel again. I have to find underwriters, right? And then I take all of the underwriters and I just find the ones that are inland marine underwriters. Right. And then I take the marine underwriters and then I find the ones that are in New York, right? We all put little qualifiers to our search to find people. Add another one. Find them. Work with different partners, right? Mm-hmm. Look at different, industries that could be good fits, right? Right. Put yourself out there and find the person. You put those qualifiers on for every single rec that you find. I've recruited for actuaries. I've recruited for our inside counsel. I've recruited for our operations. I recruited our HR director for Asia Pacific, right? Over 6 different countries, right? You just have to give me the qualifiers and I will find them. Diversity is a qualifier. Add it. Do the work. That's what I would say.
I love that. Thank you for that. So I think that's the perfect segue. Next slide, please, to talk about retention. So hopefully everyone's sort of following along. We're talking about recruiting, and now we're focusing in on retention, right? So once you have captured that talent, what do you do internally to keep your talent? So Niara, let's talk a little bit about this. And I know we have about 10 minutes left of this session, so I'll try to wrap it up as quickly as possible. But how would you define company culture and what is its importance?
So I actually, I wish I could remember exactly when it was, but it was a few months ago, heard this very concise definition of culture that I have just held onto like a bone in its favorite, like ragdoll toy. But it's that culture is at its core what you reward and it's what you punish. At the level, it doesn't matter if you're talking about performance or enacting. I see Savay.
Taking notes. I hope everyone's taking notes.
If it's about how you're participating in an office, at the core, whether it's a monetary bonus or lack thereof, or just more face time with leadership, what are you rewarding and what are you punishing or ignoring? Because you can say all day long that, empathetic communication is something that we value. But if you're then promoting people who do not do not exemplify, empathetic communication, or people that are good at the job and empathetic communication are getting left behind, then you're sending a different message than is coming out of your mouth.
Right.
At the core of it all, I like to tell people, like, that's where you should really start. Look at and be just completely honest with yourself, objectively, and in different formats and different spaces. What are you rewarding and what are you punishing?
Right. So, for those who may not know, like, we've been throwing acronyms around, right? DEI, D&I. What is DEI, and why is it such a hot topic right now?
So DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And honestly, at the core of it, it is advocating for a different construction of power. It's advocating for different habits than have been traditional to the insurance industry. And like anything else that's a big shift or a big change, you're going to get very divisive opinions on it. Some people are going to be
Right.
gung ho about change, and some people are going to be really stuck in their ways. And that's kind of just the nature of any sort of change. The reason that this change
Right.
is very important is that it offers, of course, there's, the business benefits, there's the, like, what this was overall, but like the top quartile of most diverse companies in this study were like 30% more likely to have above average like financial outcome. There's all of those stats. You can like put why is DEI
Right.
important and find all of those. But then on the more like human side of things, I think that we forget a lot. Like, I heard growing up all the time, like, HR is there to protect the company, not to protect you. And I think that as DEI as a priority in the insurance industry grows, we're going to realize and find that protecting your employees is protecting the company, making sure that they are thriving, making sure that they have a safe space to show up, making sure that they can see themselves reflected in leadership and all of those kind of things, at the end of the day, is going to protect the company rather than trying to like find ways around it and do everything the same and then protect yourself with the aftermath.
Right. Absolutely. So as we wrap up this session and close out this session, Niara, what steps can companies take today to start implementing their DEI strategy, or what do you see that companies out there are not thinking about or not implementing?
I think make sure that you're looking at it beyond the trainings. Make sure you're looking at it as a company-wide deal, if you will.
Right.
Hire who you want to, or bring in consultants, whatever it is. But if you're putting it on that one person or that one team, it's not going to make a difference. This needs to be a commitment and a priority across the organization as a whole. This needs to be not only said or like stated it's important by leadership, but make sure you're showing up, make sure you're willing to admit that you're going to get it wrong and ask questions when you do get it wrong. So I would say, number one is like just go beyond just the in the moment things and do an all around reflection and review everything. Review your policies, your procedures, your handbooks, like the places that you think, well, that's just how we've done it, like it's fine, that can't be it. Those are the places that you really need to be reviewing the most of the time. Think to yourself, like, really try to get at least a base understanding of discrimination in this country at the end of the day. And I think once you have that base understanding and you're really willing to digest it and you're willing to inspect it and understand that as a whole, we as a society, in doing the same thing every day the same way, are feeding into that discrimination, whether we like it or not. Once you have that understanding and have swallowed that, when you review your procedures and your documents and all of that stuff internally, I guarantee you're going to be like, oh, I hadn't
Didn't
even
see it
thought about that.
before.
Yeah.
Right.
You're going to find some surprises in there. And it's important to just look at them objectively. Look at them as like, oh, okay, well, that's not the most efficient, or that's not the most inclusive way that we're doing it. We could do it. And figure out how to change it. Don't harp on it. Don't say like, oh, how could we not have known? I can't believe we've been doing this. Oh, darling. Like, no, take it, say, oh, we messed up, and keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it's already been an hour. I could sit here and chat with you guys for another hour. So our contact information will be posted on here. Next slide, please. This next slide over here is just some information on next steps, how to get involved with the transition. So as I mentioned before, there were 9 webinars before this one. This webinar is W10 and it will be uploaded onto the Transitions website. So it's www.thetransitions.org. So within a couple of days, this webinar will be posted there, along with the PowerPoint presentation, along with a handout that all of us have collaborated on and put together with links to external resources where you can read articles, listen to podcasts, browse more websites. So there's plenty of resources out there for you. Next slide, please. And finally, we have our contact information posted on here. So if you were moved today, if you would like to reach out to any of us today, I encourage you to email us. We would love to chat with you. And of course, talk more about our companies and what we do on a day-to-day basis. And you can also find us on LinkedIn and connect with us that way. So I hope that for everyone that attended this session, you found it engaging, you found it informative. We certainly had a blast. So I hope that you all felt that and enjoyed this webinar. And for all the panelists that are here today, thank you so much for your time. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and keep fighting the good fight. Have a great afternoon, everyone.